She was just another passenger on Flight 237 to Dubai. Nobody knew she was a former SAS Special Forces operator. When 4 terrorists hijacked the plane, she stayed calm. Then the captain heard her voice through the cockpit door and recognized her. Everything changed in that moment. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The morning sun shone brightly over Heathrow Airport as passengers lined up for Flight 237 to Dubai. Among the crowd, a young woman in her late 20s walked quietly through the gate. She wore simple jeans, a navy blue jacket, and carried a small backpack. Her brown hair was tied back in a ponytail. Nothing about her seemed special or unusual. "Boarding pass, please," the gate agent said with a smile. "Here you are," the woman replied in a clear British accent. She handed over her documents. The agent scanned the pass. "Thank you, Miss Rhoda Thompson. Seat 32F. Enjoy your flight." Rhoda nodded and walked toward the massive Boeing 777. She found her window seat near the back and placed her backpack carefully under the seat in front of her. An elderly gentleman sitting next to her smiled warmly. "First time to Dubai?" he asked cheerfully. "No, I've been a few times actually," Rhoda replied politely. She pulled out a paperback novel from her bag and opened it. The man understood she preferred quiet and returned to his newspaper. Around them, the plane filled quickly. Young families struggled with toddlers and heavy bags. Business people in suits already had their laptops out. University students laughed together as they found their seats. Elderly couples held hands, excited for their trip. Flight attendants moved through the aisles, helping passengers store luggage. One stopped by Rhoda's row. Her name tag read, "Jessica. Can I get you anything before takeoff, love?" Jessica asked warmly. "Just water, please." "Thank you," Rhoda said with a friendly smile. Jessica had no idea that the polite woman in seat 32F had spent 8 years in the Special Air Service, the legendary SAS. Rhoda Thompson had been part of Britain's most elite Special Forces unit. She specialized in counter-terrorism, hostage rescue, and dangerous tactical operations. Her service record was classified at the highest government levels. She had rescued hostages from terrorist compounds, disabled bomb threats, and conducted surveillance against the most dangerous people on the planet. She had trained extensively in aircraft security, learning every scenario that could happen at 39,000 feet. She knew how to breach cockpit doors, disarm hijackers, and coordinate rescue operations in confined spaces. But all of that was behind her now. She had left the service 6 months ago, burned out from years of operations she could never discuss. The nightmares had become too frequent. The emotional toll too heavy. She had seen things no person should see, done things that were necessary but haunting. Today, she was just another passenger. She was flying to Dubai to start a new life as a security consultant for an international corporation. Normal work, predictable hours. No more jumping from helicopters at midnight. No more raids on terrorist safe houses. No more carrying weapons everywhere. The aircraft door closed with a heavy metallic sound. Flight attendants began the safety demonstration. They pointed to emergency exits and demonstrated oxygen masks. Most passengers ignored them, absorbed in their phones or magazines. But Rhoda watched carefully. She noted each emergency exit, counting the rows from her seat. 14 rows forward to the left exit. 16 rows back to the rear exit. She observed which passengers looked physically capable in an emergency. Old habits died hard. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," a calm voice announced. "I'm Captain James Morrison. Welcome aboard Flight 237 to Dubai. We're expecting smooth skies today with a flight time of approximately 6 hours and 50 minutes. We'll be cruising at 39,000 feet. The weather in Dubai is sunny and warm. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight." The engines roared to life. The massive Boeing 777 rolled backward from the gate, then turned and began moving toward the runway. Minutes later, they reached the runway. The engines increased to full power. The aircraft accelerated faster and faster until the nose lifted, the wings gripped the air, and they rose gracefully into the sky. Radha watched London shrink below. The neat streets and houses gave way to green fields. Soon they climbed through clouds, breaking into brilliant sunshine above. She thought about her new life in Dubai. A normal job with normal hours. No more life and death decisions. No more operations keeping her awake for days. No more funerals for fellow operators who didn't make it home. She allowed herself a small smile. This was going to be good. A fresh start. Maybe she would finally sleep without nightmares. Maybe she would make friends who didn't carry weapons. Maybe she would find some peace. If only she had known how wrong she was about this flight being routine. 2 hours passed peacefully as the aircraft cruised over Europe. Flight attendants had served lunch. Most passengers had settled into comfortable routines. Some dozed with their seats reclined. Others watched movies on screens. Business travelers typed on laptops. Parents tried to keep children entertained. Radha had finished her book. She stared out the window at endless clouds below. The elderly gentleman beside her had fallen asleep, his newspaper folded on his lap. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Just another international flight among thousands crossing the skies every day. Then Radha noticed something that made her body tense. 3 rows ahead, a man stood up and walked toward the front. On the surface, nothing seemed unusual. Passengers got up constantly to use restrooms or stretch their legs. But Radha's trained eye caught something wrong. His walk was too purposeful, too controlled. His eyes scanned the cabin like he was assessing threats. And his hand brushed against his jacket pocket in a gesture Radha recognized immediately. He was checking a weapon. Her pulse quickened, but she kept her breathing steady. She watched from the corner of her eye as another man stood up 4 rows ahead. Then a third man rose near the front. All 3 moving at almost the same moment, all 3 checking their pockets in that telltale way. Radha's stomach dropped. This wasn't coincidence. This was coordinated action. These men were working together. The aircraft was about to be hijacked. Her mind raced through possibilities. How many hostiles? At least 3, possibly more. What weapons? Unknown, but likely knives or small guns. What was their objective? Ransom, political demands, or something worse? How much time before they acted? Seconds, maybe less. The first man reached the front galley where 2 flight attendants were preparing drinks. Jessica approached him with her professional smile. "Can I help you, sir? The restroom is just behind you." In one smooth motion, the man pulled a knife from his jacket. The blade was at least 6 inches long. He grabbed Jessica and pressed the knife against her throat. "Nobody move," he shouted in heavily accented English. "Everyone stay in seats or this woman dies right now." The effect was instant and terrible. Screams erupted throughout the cabin. Passengers jumped to their feet in panic. Children began crying. A woman fainted and slumped against the window. "Phones down," the hijacker screamed, pulling Jessica tighter. "Hands where I can see them. This aircraft belongs to us now." The second and third men pulled out their own knives, moving quickly to block the aisles. They brandished the weapons menacingly, their eyes hard and cold. Then a fourth man appeared from the back, moving with military precision toward the cockpit. He had a small pistol in his hand. Somehow, impossibly, he had smuggled a firearm through airport security. Radha's mind processed the tactical situation with cold efficiency. 4 hijackers, 3 with knives, 1 with a gun. The one with the gun was the primary threat. All 4 appeared trained, moving with coordination. These were professionals executing a planned operation. The man with the pistol reached the cockpit door and pounded on it. "Open this door immediately. You have 10 seconds or we start executing passengers one by one." In the cockpit, Captain James Morrison heard the shouting and felt his blood run cold. 23 years of flying experience had never prepared him for this. This was every pilot's worst fear. His co-pilot, First Officer Sarah Chen, was already transmitting on the emergency frequency. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is British Airways Flight 237. We have a hijacking in progress. For suspected terrorists armed with knives and at least one firearm. Request immediate assistance." Morrison stared at the reinforced cockpit door. Post-September 11 security protocols meant that door was designed to withstand extreme force. But protocols also meant he couldn't open it. Opening the door would give terrorists access to the flight controls and 347 lives would be in their hands. 10 seconds are up, the gunman shouted. "Last chance. Open the door or people die." Morrison grabbed the intercom microphone. His voice needed to sound calm even though his heart was pounding. "This is the captain. Please remain calm. Do not attempt to confront these individuals. Follow their instructions. Help is on the way." The gunman fired a shot into the ceiling. The explosive sound in the confined space was deafening. Passengers screamed in absolute terror. A baby wailed at the top of its lungs. That was a warning. Next bullet goes in someone's head. You have 30 seconds to open this door. Radha knew she had to act. Every second of delay meant more panic, more trauma, and a higher chance someone would get hurt or killed. She assessed her options with cold tactical precision. She was unarmed. The terrorists had knives and a gun. She was outnumbered 4-1. The cabin was full of innocent civilians who would panic and create chaos. One wrong move could trigger executions. But she had years of training for exactly this scenario. She had practiced aircraft takedowns dozens of times. She knew the layout, the choke points, the vulnerabilities. More importantly, she knew something the terrorists didn't. She was here. The gunman was focused on the cockpit door, his back partially turned to the cabin. That was a tactical error. The other three were watching passengers, but they were amateurs compared to her training. She could see it in their stance, their grip on the knives, the way their eyes darted nervously. Radha stood up slowly, keeping her movements non-threatening. The elderly gentleman beside her stirred and opened his eyes. "Please stay seated and stay quiet," she whispered to him. "Everything will be all right." She moved into the aisle, keeping her hands visible. One of the hijackers with a knife immediately spotted her. "Sit down. Now," he shouted, waving the blade at her. "I need to use the restroom," Radha said, her voice trembling convincingly. She was playing the terrified passenger perfectly. "Please, I'm going to be sick." "Sit down or I will cut you." "Please, I'm pregnant," she lied, touching her stomach. "I need the bathroom right now." The hijacker hesitated. That single moment of hesitation was what she needed. It told her he wasn't fully committed to killing. That gave her an advantage. But the gunman at the cockpit heard the commotion and turned. His eyes locked on Radha. Something in his expression changed. He studied her face carefully, then her posture, the way she held herself. "You," he said slowly. "Come here." Slowly. Radha's mind raced. Had he recognized her? That seemed impossible. Her operations had been classified. Her face had never been in media. Unless someone had leaked information, unless there was a security breach. She walked forward carefully, hands still visible. With each step, she was getting closer to the primary threat. Closer to the gun. She was now only 10 feet from the cockpit door. "Stop there," the gunman ordered. He kept the weapon trained on her, but his eyes were evaluating her. You move like a soldier. Who are you? Inside the cockpit, Captain Morrison's blood ran cold. He had excellent hearing, and something about that exchange made him press his ear against the door. Then he heard it. A woman's voice responding to the terrorist. I don't know what you mean. I'm just a passenger. Please, I just want to sit down. Morrison's breath caught in his throat. That voice. He knew that voice. It couldn't be. But he would recognize that particular cadence, that specific accent, anywhere. It had been 3 years, but some things you never forget. His mind flashed back to a classified operation in northern Syria. A joint task force mission to extract a kidnapped British diplomat from an ISIS compound. The operation had been compromised. They were surrounded and taking heavy fire. The extraction team's helicopter pilot had been hit. And then a woman's voice had come over the radio. Calm, professional, lethal. This is SAS Operator Thompson. I have control of the helicopter. Redirecting to extraction point Beta. All units converge on my position. We're getting everyone out. She had flown that damaged helicopter through a storm of bullets, coordinated the extraction under fire, and saved 11 people that night, including Morrison himself. He had been providing close air support in a separate aircraft and had seen the whole thing unfold. Major Rhoda Thompson. One of the most decorated Special Forces operators in British military history. And if she was on his aircraft during a hijacking, then these terrorists had made a catastrophic mistake. Morrison made a split-second decision. He grabbed a piece of paper and wrote quickly, Rhoda Thompson SAS on board. I recognize her voice. She saved my life in Syria 2022. She will handle this. Trust her. He held it up to the small security camera that fed to the cabin crew's monitors. He knew the flight attendants could see it if they checked their screens. In the cabin, Jessica had managed to subtly check the monitor while her captor was focused on Rhoda. She read Morrison's message and her eyes went wide. She looked at Rhoda with new understanding. The gunman was still focused on Rhoda. Empty your pockets. Everything, now. Rhoda slowly removed items from her pockets. A wallet. Some loose change. A pen. She placed them on the floor. Your shoes. Take them off. She complied, removing her sneakers. She stood barefoot on the aircraft carpet, looking vulnerable and compliant. But she was counting distances. The gunman was 8 feet away. His finger was on the trigger, but his grip was slightly loose. He was confident, maybe too confident. The knife-wielding terrorists were spread through the cabin, too far away to support him immediately. Turn around, the gunman ordered. Slowly. As Rhoda turned, she caught Jessica's eye. The flight attendant gave the smallest nod, acknowledging Morrison's message. Rhoda's mind shifted into combat mode. The captain knew who she was. That changed everything. She could coordinate. The gunman stepped closer to search her. Another tactical error. He was now within striking distance. Listen to me carefully, Rhoda said softly, her voice dropping. The terrified passenger act disappeared, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. In approximately 3 seconds, I'm going to disarm you. You can surrender now, or you can wake up in a hospital under arrest. Your choice. The gunman laughed. You think you can? Rhoda moved with explosive speed. Her right hand shot up and grabbed the gun, twisting it away from her body while her left hand struck his throat with precise force. The techniques were muscle memory, drilled through thousands of hours of training. The gun discharged, but the bullet went harmlessly into the ceiling. Rhoda continued the motion, using his own momentum to throw him off balance. Her knee came up into his solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. In less than 2 seconds, she had the gun and he was gasping on the floor. The cabin erupted in chaos. The three other terrorists reacted immediately, moving toward her with knives raised. But Rada was already moving. She fired a single shot into the leg of the nearest terrorist. He went down screaming. The second and third hesitated for a crucial moment. Security cockpit. Rada shouted in the command voice she had used in combat. Two hostiles with blades, center and rear cabin. Passengers down. From the cockpit, Morrison heard everything. He grabbed the intercom. All passengers. That woman has military training. Do exactly what she says. She is here to save you. His words galvanized the cabin. Several large male passengers immediately stood up, emboldened by the knowledge that someone trained was in control. The second terrorist lunged at Rada with his knife. She sidestepped, using a classic Krav Maga technique to redirect his momentum. As he passed, she struck the back of his knee, forcing him down, then disarmed him with a brutal wrist lock. The third terrorist saw his companions falling and panicked. He grabbed the nearest passenger, a young woman, and pressed his knife to her throat. "Drop the gun or she dies," he screamed. Rada's eyes locked on him. She could see his hands shaking. He was terrified and desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. "Look at your friends," Rada said calmly. "They're disabled. You're alone. This aircraft is full of witnesses. You're not getting out of this. But that woman doesn't have to die. Let her go, and you get to live. Keep the knife at her throat, and I put a bullet through your shoulder and you still lose. Your choice." The terrorist's eyes darted around. He saw passengers standing now, emboldened. He saw his leader on the floor, disarmed. He saw blood pooling where the first terrorist had been shot. "Last chance," Rada said. 5 seconds. The knife wavered. Then slowly, the terrorist released the woman and dropped the weapon. He raised his hands in surrender. Two university students who looked like rugby players immediately grabbed him and forced him to the ground. "Someone get me zip ties, belts, anything we can use for restraints," Rada ordered. Passengers responded immediately. Within minutes, all 4 terrorists were bound and secured. The one Rada had shot in the leg was bleeding but stable. She used a first aid kit to apply pressure bandages, her medical training from the SAS kicking in automatically. Morrison's voice came over the intercom again. "This is your captain. The immediate threat has been neutralized thanks to the extraordinary actions of one passenger. We are diverting to the nearest airport and will land in approximately 20 minutes. Medical teams and security forces are standing by. Please remain calm and seated." Jessica approached Rada with tears streaming down her face. "You saved us. You saved all of us." Rada holstered the gun in her waistband and put a gentle hand on Jessica's shoulder. "You did great. You stayed calm under pressure. That's what saved you." The elderly gentleman who had been sitting next to Rada approached cautiously. "Miss, I don't know who you are, but thank you. My daughter and grandchildren are on this flight. You saved my family." Rada felt her own eyes stinging. This was why she had served. This was what all the training, all the sacrifice, all the nightmares were for. To protect innocent people. To stand between evil and those who couldn't defend themselves. Other passengers came forward, thanking her, touching her shoulder, hugging her. Children who had been crying were now calm, sensing the danger had passed. The baby who had been wailing was now quiet in his mother's arms. Morrison unlocked the cockpit door and stepped into the cabin. His eyes immediately found Rada. "Major Thompson," he said formally, then broke into a smile. "I should have known. Of all the aircraft, on all the flights, you ended up on mine." Rada's eyes widened in recognition. "Captain Morrison. From Syria?" "The very same. You saved my life once. Looks like you just saved it again, along with everyone else on board." They shook hands, the grip firm and meaningful. Two professionals who had faced death together and survived. "How did you know it was me?" Radha asked. "Your voice. I would recognize it anywhere. When you spoke to that terrorist, I knew. So I sent a message to the crew. I figured if anyone could handle this situation, it was you." The two university students were practically bouncing with adrenaline. "That was incredible. You were like an action movie but real." Radha laughed despite herself. "Right now, I need you two to help the flight attendants. People need water, blankets, and someone to talk to. Can you do that?" They nodded eagerly and hurried off to help. As the aircraft continued toward Dubai, the cabin gradually returned to something approaching normal. The four hijackers sat in the rear section, restrained and guarded by volunteers. Children stopped crying. Passengers began talking quietly, processing what had happened. Jessica found Radha and hugged her fiercely. "You saved my life. That knife was at my throat. I thought I was going to die." "You saved yourself," Radha told her. "You trusted me and followed instructions perfectly under extreme stress. That took real courage." 2 hours later, Flight 237 began its descent into Dubai. The sun was setting over the desert, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The city's incredible skyline rose from the sands, a forest of gleaming towers. Morrison's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our final approach into Dubai International Airport. On behalf of First Officer Chen and myself, I want to thank you for your incredible courage during today's events. I especially want to acknowledge the extraordinary actions of one passenger whose training and bravery saved everyone aboard this aircraft. We are alive because of her." The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause. People turned to look at Radha, clapping and cheering. She felt her face flush with embarrassment. She had never been comfortable with attention or praise. The aircraft touched down smoothly on the runway. As promised, Dubai's elite counter-terrorism units surrounded the plane immediately. Armed officers in tactical gear formed a perimeter. Ambulances and police vehicles waited nearby with lights flashing. The four hijackers were taken off first, escorted by heavily armed security. Intelligence officers immediately began interviewing Radha and other witnesses. The interviews took nearly 3 hours. Finally, well after midnight, Radha was cleared to leave the airport. A woman in her 50s stepped out of a black car waiting at the curb. "Miss Thompson, I'm Sarah Chen's mother. Sarah called me and told me what happened. I own a hotel here in Dubai. You'll be staying as my guest for as long as you like. No charges. It's the least I can do for the woman who saved my daughter's life." Radha was too tired to argue. "Thank you. That's very kind." 3 days later, after giving additional statements to British and Emirati authorities, Radha finally had time to process everything that had happened. She sat in a cafe overlooking the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, drinking tea and watching the city move around her. Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from Captain Morrison thanking her again. Messages from passengers she had saved. Media requests for interviews that she ignored. And finally, a message from a number she recognized. "Major Thompson, your actions on Flight 237 have been noted at the highest levels. The Prime Minister himself has asked to commend you personally. More importantly, British Special Forces Command would like to discuss your return to active service. Your skills are needed now more than ever. The world needs operators like you. Please consider it. Director, UKSF." Radha stared at the message for a long time. Part of her missed it desperately. The sense of purpose, the knowledge that she was protecting people, the camaraderie of working with other elite operators. But another part remembered why she had left. The nightmares, the psychological toll, the friends who didn't come home. The knowledge that one day she might not be fast enough and people would die because of it. She typed a response. "Thank you for the offer. I'm honored, but I need to respectfully decline. I've served my time. There are younger operators who can take my place. I'm ready for a different life now. She hit send before she could change her mind. Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. This time from Captain Morrison. Drinks on me next time you're in London. You saved my crew, my passengers, and my aircraft. I owe you everything. You're a genuine hero, Radha. Thank you. She smiled and typed back. Just doing what I was trained to do, Captain. But I'll definitely take you up on those drinks. See you in London. Another message appeared. This one from Jessica, the flight attendant. I just wanted you to know that I'm going back to work next week. I was scared I wouldn't be able to fly again after what happened. But then I remembered how calm and confident you were. If you could face down 4 terrorists with a gun, I can handle some turbulence and rude passengers. You inspired me to be braver. Thank you. Radha felt tears sting her eyes. That message meant more to her than all the official commendations in the world. As the sun set over Dubai, Radha thought about everything that had happened. She had boarded Flight 237 as an ordinary passenger trying to leave her military life behind. But when crisis came, her training and instincts had taken over automatically. She had done what needed to be done to protect innocent people. Maybe she couldn't completely leave that part of herself behind. Maybe it would always be part of who she was. But that didn't mean she had to go back to active service. She could use those skills in other ways. Security consulting, training others, being ready to act if circumstances demanded it. She had saved 347 lives because Captain Morrison had recognized her voice. One voice in a cabin full of terrified passengers. One voice that reminded him of a mission years ago. One voice that changed everything. Sometimes that's all it takes to make a difference. One person with the right skills in the right place at the right time, willing to act when others freeze in fear. Radha finished her tea and stood up. She had a new job starting tomorrow. A normal job with normal hours. But she knew now that she would never be completely normal. She would always be watching, always assessing threats, always ready to act if needed. And somehow that was okay. Because the world needed people like her. Not wearing uniforms or carrying badges, but living ordinary lives while possessing extraordinary skills. Ready to become heroes when the moment demanded it. She walked back to her hotel through the glittering Dubai night. Just another woman in a crowd of millions. But she knew the truth. She was Radha Thompson, former SAS operator, counterterrorism specialist, and the woman who had saved Flight 237. And if the moment came again, she would be ready.